Turning to Australia now, because it's been announced their new $5 bill will not feature an image of King Charles III. The Australian Central Bank says the new design is intended to pay tribute to the culture and history of the first Australians. While the $5 bill is Australia's only banknote to feature a member of the British monarchy, King Charles is still set to appear on the coins. He's been demoted only to the coins. But could this move be the first step toward an Australian republic? For this week's Royal Hit, I am absolutely delighted to say I am joined in the studio by royal broadcaster and commentator Rafe Heydel-Mankoo. Rafe, is this a snub to Britain?
Well, not to Britain, because we have to remember the King of Australia is entirely independent from the King of the United Kingdom. The two kings could go to war with each other legally. The Australian monarchy has been repatriated and it's evolved into a uniquely Australian institution. What this is a deliberate attempt to actually try to erase the visible bonds between the Australian monarchy and the Australian people. And it's part, actually, of a much wider attack on Australia's culture and heritage, and particularly on its British inheritance. And so it comes along with its global decolonisation project in terms of getting rid of the Australian flag, making Australia into a republic eventually, and also changing the date of Australia Day. Australia Day was January the 26th, 1788, when the British first arrived as settlers and the first fleet settled there. And much like the 1619 project in America, which seeks to change the founding date to when the slaves first arrived, there's a similar movement here. All of this is being orchestrated by this new Labour government, which is as drenched in woke ideology as our own Labour party is, although not quite as bad as Justin Trudeau, I should say, his Liberal Party in Canada. But actually, on that point, it's just a great shame for the monarchy, I think, now, to have, at a crucial moment for the monarchy around the Commonwealth, as people discuss these sorts of issues, to have three painfully woke governments in New Zealand, in Australia and in Canada. And it's such a contrast to 10 years ago, when you had these wonderful pro-monarchist prime ministers, John Key in New Zealand, Tony Abbott in Australia, Stephen Harper in Canada, who were so gung-ho for the monarchy. And it's just, I think, rather unfortunate timing.
Yeah, so is this political correctness from the Australian government? You said we've got three woke governments in those key countries. Is this a political correctness move if they're bringing back they're going to be celebrating the indigenous people? Is that a nice thing, or is this political correctness?
Well, look, there are many ways you can celebrate, the Aboriginal and Indigenous peoples of Australia. They're already represented in some form or another on three of these banknotes, and uniquely Australian banknotes, being very politically correct, have two faces on each note. A man and a woman appear on the obverse and reverse of each. So they have more faces than any other country almost to include someone on there. They've got 9 in total. They could easily make space for the king and have representation for Aboriginal people if they wanted to. This goes far beyond political correctness. As I say, it is a direct attack on the monarchy. And in terms of political correctness, we've just had the Australian foreign minister in town slagging off the British on an official visit, if you can imagine that. Talk about rude and crass, saying that Britain has to really reflect on its colonial heritage. So it is part of a much larger agenda.
Apparently, you're not allowed to say slagging off on the television.
Oh, my apologies to Ofcom.
I'm very sorry for saying that. And then I just repeated it. So who's the buffoon here? I think it is me. Anyway, the King's coronation has also been in the spotlight. A minister has apparently said that it will not be a display of lavishness and excess. Is he allowed to promise that? Surely it's the King's decision.
Well, of course, it is the taxpayer and the government's coffers that pay for all of this, but I very much hope he's wrong. Let me just say that.
Why?
It's been 70 years since we've last had a coronation. If you look back to the Queen's coronation in '53, we had rationing taking place. People wanted a moment of great glamour and glitz to lift them out of the doldrums. Same thing when the Queen got married in 1948, and women gave up their ration coupon so she could have a nicer wedding dress. I think today, and given what we're suffering today, people want to have a great glamorous show to show to the world how wonderful our monarchy is. And also, actually, we don't have many occasions in this country for patriotic outbursts. Unlike America or France, we don't have a Bastille Day or an Independence Day to celebrate every year. That's the downside of being the world's longest unbroken constitution. But so instead, it's royal weddings, royal funerals, jubilees, but particularly the coronation that provides an occasion for the nation to come together. That's where you get nation building, where you have national identity forged for each generation. Social cohesion comes into being through street parties, community activities, and everyone remembers where they were, and they can actively take part in what is actually the most important ceremonial and constitutional event in our country. And it's a great shame. We hear that the peers won't be wearing their robes. Why not? Once a year, they're in storage, just dust them off. There's no cost involved there. To have a cost of living coronation is just quite sad.
But I don't mean to upset you, Rafe, but are you being a little nostalgic? If you look at the surveys data that comes out every now and again, young people simply aren't interested in the monarchy. And at the same time as all this is going on, you've got Prince Harry and Meghan who are having fun going to see the marriage renewal vows of Ellen DeGeneres, who of course is a big celebrity in the US. Are people more interested in that kind of celebrity now, younger people anyway, than they are in our British monarchy?
Well, of all the ways to attract young people to the monarchy, I don't think a cut price coronation is the way to go about it. It's precisely the opposite. You know, unfortunately, as we well know, we've got an education system that doesn't teach about the monarchy, that teaches that hierarchy is bad, and that teaches basically a culture of self-loathing of Britain. So when kids are being exposed to negative attitudes towards Britain and its institutions, it's hardly surprising that they hold such views, which makes it even more important that we proactively support and promote all of our institutions, including the monarchy, and what better way to do so than at the coronation?